Patriot Family Homes is a short-term rental company. It's
Right.
also tied heavily in with the military. Can you kind of explain what the company does? I know there's many facets to it, and then kind of what the mission is of the organization.
Yep. Yeah. So we are in the short-term rental industry. This is kind of the area that Joe actually did start trying to do long-term. And as he told me the story years ago, the demand for short-term rentals at the time, he was in Columbus, Georgia, and he had just a few homes. But he said, the demand is just incredible. And at that time, Airbnb was starting to come on board, and so he was listing through there, and he couldn't get them emptied long enough to find a renter for long-term. So, he just he didn't fight the trend. He went with it. And so, yeah, we started off in military, and he was originally, that was, just a little background on Fort Benning, Georgia. It is the biggest initial entry training facility in the United States Army. You've got all your enlisted infantry soldiers and then Army or armor soldiers that go through Fort Benning, Georgia, and then also on the officer side. So you're commissioned officers as well for both armor and infantry. And so there are a lot of graduation ceremonies that take place there. And as a part of that drove, I think, this demand, or in part at least, this demand for folks to come down and visit Fort Benning, Georgia. And so Joe saw that, he saw the demand. He thought, well, hey, if I can do this here at Fort Benning, let me look at some of the other military markets. And, obviously being in the military and having kind of the background and insights there, that's where he started. So that's kind of our foundation. And then also too, Joe had a strong desire to employ other veterans. And then he also saw, probably in our workforce, one of the most underserved and very highly talented and skilled forces out there are our spouses in the military. And so he kind of tapped into that and started offering remote work opportunities for some of these spouses. It was portable, exportable. They could go wherever they want. And so, he kind of just pulled all that together. But then after a while, the military market, he decided he wanted to branch out a little bit further from that, and started going into places like Montgomery, started going into Huntsville, Birmingham, some of those other locations that were kind of off the beaten path. And he noticed that the Airbnb phenomena was growing beyond just your typical vacation rental markets. It's really a demand that is everywhere now. This is how people want to travel. And then, interestingly enough, again, I was watching Joe from the sideline, very interested to see how this was going to play out, because, we had talked about this, and he's like, oh, I'm going to build this big company. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure you are, young man. Who are you? I'm much older than you. I've been around the block. I know so much more than you. But, when the pandemic came around, I actually called him up and I said, and it was, early on in the pandemic. I said, Joe, how do you think this is going to play for you? He's like, hey, I'm really concerned. But in true fashion, not only did he turn it around, they actually grew through the pandemic. And in some ways, the pandemic may have helped with, the remote work, increasing people's mobility in the workforce. A lot of people now can work from wherever they want to. I don't know, maybe a lot of your viewers that are into this have seen what Airbnb is doing, and just the incredible response they've received for people seeking employment through them, now that they allow them to work from anywhere in the world, right? So I think the pandemic actually kind of, propelled the short-term rental industry, if you will. So it just continues to grow. It's incredible. I can't, I would have never thought that places like Montgomery, Alabama, Huntsville, some of those places would do as well as they do with short-term rentals.
Yeah.
The cap rates are phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's an outside the box way of thinking when it comes to short-term rentals. I've had similar realizations. It's funny, when I just recently kind of learned about Patriot Family Homes, and then in talking to Kate, like it's like really funny how similar the realizations have been to Joe's experience. Obviously, he scaled it much bigger than I have, but I have pretty much all military spouses that work on my team as well. Yep. And it has been phenomenal.
Yep.
You know, a couple that helped me with the Airbnbs, and then my EA is a military spouse as well. And they're just amazing individuals, super talented, often underemployed.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, I agree on that. And then also buying in the non-traditional markets, you know, they're so overlooked. Everyone rushes to Destin Beach, Florida, instead of, you know, looking at right in their backyard where it could just work phenomenally well.
We call them utility markets.
Okay.
And again, what we try to do is we try to look for a cross section between, you know, a little bit of like regional travel, something that would be attractive to folks to bring them in for whatever reason, whether it's, you know, maybe an amusement park, water park, a national forest, anything like that. And then you're also looking for industry, right? So to give you an example of that would be, you know, maybe FedEx in Memphis, Tennessee, I think drives a lot of folks into that area. You know, in Huntsville, you've got a huge aerospace industry. A lot of people may not, I didn't know this, but, you know, highest concentration of PhDs anywhere in the nation is in Huntsville, Alabama. You know?
Interesting.
Yeah, I would have thought, you know, somewhere up here in the Northeast.
Yeah, MIT or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, something like that. But then, you know, with Huntsville, there's, you know, tremendous amount of growth going on there. And so, you know, I think that's just an example of, you know, like you said, you don't need to be near the beach. You don't necessarily need to be in the mountains or your traditional travel vacation market.
Yeah. And how many properties are you guys up to now?
370 ish is where we're at right now.
Okay. Yeah. And so, and what's the ratio of owned properties that you guys have purchased compared to managed?
Yeah. So I would say that it's a very small percentage of managed. In fact, I was just talking to our account manager today, and she's at 52 with the total that she oversees and kind of keeps track on how revenues, how the performance of the homes, reviews, all those sorts of things. Then we have about an equal number of leased properties. So we do rental arbitrage. In fact, that's a way that we kind of test out new markets rather than doing a huge capital allocation and then having to maybe sell a year later. We go in with a lease and test out the market that way. And then the vast majority, you know, about half of the homes or more are owned. Okay. Now, with that, they're split because we also have investors that come in with us.
Okay.
And kind of dive into that a little bit. The company there's two parts to it. There's PFH Management Co. LLC, which is where I work, and the vast majority of the folks do work. And then there's the Patriot Family Homes LLC. That's like the holdings company. Okay. And inside that, Joe is partnering with other investors to set up portfolios, which is really kind of where we're you know, Joe's going everywhere. You know, he's got a grand plan to dominate the world. But you know, we'll work with management clients. We'll do rental arbitrage. But you know, where we really like to focus is on the investment side. So we'll create essentially a fund of one and build out a real estate portfolio for someone.
I see. Okay. So how does that work when they partner with you on that? So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, that sounds cool. I mean, right. You guys know what you're doing. You know, let's partner together. What does that structure look like?
Well, I'll start with capital. Generally, when you're coming in, it's going to be about $2 million in capital or equity that you're going to bring into it that you're willing to leverage at least 2 times. Okay. So willing to leverage to at least $4 million. And then from there, we'll set up an operating agreement. You will partner with Patriot Family Homes, LLC. Joe will work a small equity stake with that so that goals are aligned with the investor. And then from there, we will sign off on the operating agreement, create the EIN, get the articles formed for the LLC of the entity, and then we'll go to work finding, acquiring, renovating if necessary, furnishing and setting up, and then we will put it in with the PFH Management LLC to manage the day-to-day. And then Joe goes back and just manages that portfolio over time and watch the performance. If there's a particular market, again, depending on what the investor's buy box is, we could be all over the Southeast. Maybe they just want to focus into particular states of the 13 that we're in. But Joe will go back and monitor that performance, and then he'll make recommendations to. It's really the LP, but it's the LP. The partner has 90% or more share in the company, so they get to decide whether or not they sell off a particular property or if they go and acquire more in a certain area. So he's doing all of that, and we're also chasing the books and making sure that everything's done properly on the accounting as well. And it's in one of the things that I thought was really interesting with this is if someone's doing maybe a 1031 exchange. And they'd like to start diversifying and leverage, a really good opportunity. This is a way to do that. If someone is selling a business and they know they're going through any sort of liquidity event, you can significantly reduce. Again, I'm not a tax advisor, and I would recommend that someone seek tax advice on this. But I have seen us do this for another investor. You can significantly reduce the tax burden in a given year by shifting into real estate, and specifically with short-term rentals. A lot of it has to do with the startup costs associated with putting together, a short-term rental, which, that FFE is, the furnishings are not cheap. So, and then you can do accelerated depreciation, and then you can also do one first year claims as well. So, to me, that's a huge opportunity for folks that are, that I didn't even realize. Again, this is one of the gaps in my swing, and I'm learning a lot.